As a kid, I grew up with these movies like everyone else, loved them, but I didn't know anything more about them than as an audience. Hi, I'm Jeffrey Katzenberg. During the time of Little Mermaid, I was chairman of the Walt Disney Studios.
I had no animation experience or animation knowledge when I came. Hi, I'm Peter Schneider. I was the vice president of feature animation when Little Mermaid was made. But I recognized that there was something extremely powerful about what could happen at feature animation.
We're here today to meet the chairman and chief executive officer, and the president, chief operating officer of our company. And it's the beginning of a new era.
The situation that led up to the management change in 1984 was when we just tried to bring in people who knew how to run a film company. And we felt we had that between Michael Eisner on the creative side and Frank Wells on the business side.
The selection of Frank and myself to work with you in this company, we think, is an indication that the board of directors have decided that this company will be led from a creative point of view.
Michael was the glue that held it all together, in my opinion. His wacky, nutty, fantastic artistic ideas drove the company. You went to Frank to try and solve problems. He was impatient with you, but he was sort of the peacemaker.
We are here to operate this company the way Walt Disney laid it down decades ago.
The new regime, headed by Michael Eisner and Frank Wells, came to the Disney studio with a clean slate. They had no history with animation, and they had, I think, no axe to grind and no prejudices.
Michael brought Jeffrey Katzenberg in, who he had worked with closely at Paramount.
My instinct and inclination each step along the way was to bring the knowledges and the experiences I had from the live action business and the resources from that into the animated film. You know, many times that was a good thing, many times it was not such a good thing.
Jeffrey took on the project of revitalizing the studio, and Roy Disney took on the project of how do I make animation work.
I remember the first screening he came to, and it was, my God, he looks and sounds like Walt.
I think as much as anything, I was a moral support to everybody because most of them knew me anyway, and they knew I was on their side. So Michael Eisner came to me and said, what do you think about moving off the lot? I think there were only 125 people in the whole animation department. And we had this nice big building designed for them, but of course needed for other things.
It was the prime real estate. To attract big filmmakers, you wanted them on the lot, and therefore throw them off the lot. It's the best thing that ever happened to the animators, as it turns out.
Peter Schneider was also a major influence in the studio at that time, because he fostered this whole idea of communication.
It was a collective process. There's no one person can take ownership. That's what's so beautiful about animation. It's everybody.
During this time, I don't think there was any sense that animation was a big business or that it could be a big business.
A former CEO had made a statement at one point, we may bore you, but we will never shock you. And somehow it didn't feel like something, yes, yes, we can
bore people.
There's a very entrenched group of people there and ways of doing things that had to be shook up a bit, and it was tough and not popular.
When I first worked at the conference room in feature animation, there was two pictures on the wall. Walt and Brother Roy, staring over our shoulders. And everything anybody talked about was, what would have Walt done? What would have Walt done?
I kept hearing this refrain over and over and over. I said, you know, we're not Walt. We have to be us. And we have to find our own way.
And I think what happened at the time when Jeffrey, Michael, Roy, and Frank got there was they put tremendous pressure on the company to start performing.
Jeffrey was really a pusher. You know, he was not good enough, not good enough, not good enough.
In the first couple of weeks I was at the studio, I saw The Black Cauldron.
The Black Cauldron was a very expensive movie that took a long time to make, took about 4 years in production.
I saw that film and I just said, well, this is just way, way, way too violent and too scary. And, you have to edit some of these things out. And they said, well, you can't edit an animated movie. And I said, well, of course you can edit an animated movie. And they said, well, no, you can't. You cannot, and this was like, okay, this is where one of the first places that the culture clashed like crazy.
One thing you do have to give credit to Michael and Jeffrey for, we're lighting a fire under the whole process.
My experience was with kindly old men with cardigan sweaters, and here's these guys hollering in the middle of story meetings.
You had to answer for everything you did. You were expected to deliver quickly. It was like turning on a switch, and there was a lot of juice running through the room.
And it was just a change in energy. I guess there were a whole bunch of forces that collided, and the sparks were good.
Without the personalities of these four men, Eisner, Wells, Katzenberg, and Disney, it wouldn't have happened. Together and collectively, they reinvented a company.